Good morning. I am here with Nick Truyol of Sabio Systems for staffing strategies for a tight labor market, and he's going to be giving a wonderful presentation. If you have any questions, go ahead and submit them in the chat box, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. Thank you, Nick, and I will let you take over from here.
Well, thank you, Victoria. And good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be here with you today and talk to you about some of the challenges that we're all facing, including our company as well. Even though we are recruiters, we also encounter difficulties from time to time in finding people to work within our team as well too. So I definitely understand what you're going through, in addition to just speaking with so many of our clients every single day about their challenges. So I think this is a very timely topic, and I'm thrilled that the Better Business Bureau and Victoria have given us the chance here to provide this webinar for you. So let's get started. I'm just gonna have a seat here and we'll go over some of our presentation right away. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna start with some information about where we are today and how we got here from the time the pandemic hit and a little bit of right before that. So back in September of 2019, the unemployment rate began a downtrend and hit a low that hasn't been seen in over 50 years at 3.5, which was pretty incredible. And at that time, everyone that wanted a job had a job. So it was a pretty exciting time for us in the recruiting business because we were able to help so many people that wanted to work. And again, companies were doing very well, and we're all having a good time. Then the Great Shutdown began, and here in New Mexico, we experienced that back in the middle of March of 2020, which really nationally spurred a historic unemployment rate jump from 3.5 to 14.5. So almost 15% of the country was unemployed because of that. So it was very dramatic and obviously impacted all of us. Then as things began to settle down, people started being vaccinated and so forth. We then saw the downtrend begin again at the beginning of last year, and then hitting a low of 3.9 in December just last month. So, which is what's leading us to the challenges that we're facing today. The unemployment rate has improved dramatically, and the labor market is already complicated, not just by the pandemic fears, childcare challenges that a lot of our parents are facing, and the extraordinary government stimulus checks that went out that's kept a lot of people on the sidelines. A lot of folks were able to manage their expenses, and so that kind of kept some of the folks from coming back to from the labor market as quickly as we had hoped. The number of temporary and contract employees hired during COVID-19 in 2020, just to let you know, from our perspective, the U.S. staffing companies hired a total of 13.6 million people on a temporary and contract basis in 2020. That was a dramatic reduction for us of 15% at least. In some cases, some states were better, some states were worse, from a total of 16 million back in 2019. Although we're still recovering from the Great Shutdown of 2020, the demand for talent has been steady and is getting tougher and tougher than ever. Another factor that's coming into play is the retirement of a lot of folks that perhaps just didn't want to come back to the labor force altogether and figured, I'm good enough now, so I think it's time for me to check out. And we definitely saw a lot of that in 2020 and obviously 2021 as well. So give you some stats here on job openings versus hires. From this chart, you can see the divergence of the number of job openings and the number of hires that have been taking place. Since 2014, when the number of jobs exceeded the number of hires, that's pretty much when we first started noticing that trend developing, 2014, 2015. And there we saw a dramatic shift in just more job openings than people that were getting hired. However, in 2021, the number of job openings reached an all-time high of 11 million compared to 6.8 million hires in that year. So that gives you a sense already of how many jobs are still going unfilled these days. Job openings are, of course, an indicator that the economy, because of businesses tend to wait on the assurance of well-being before they choose to hire. So, we don't just go by the national news and begin to hire people. Obviously, as employers, hiring managers, we have to take into account a lot of factors before we decide to put that job posting on our job boards and our website and so forth. So, however, with so many job openings, employers should consider reviewing their employment practices and policies to attract and retain talent. That's what we're going to be getting into as far as what we can do differently now. And from what we were doing last year, perhaps, or maybe 5 years ago, and so forth. Some companies tend to lag in their changes, and I'm hoping that after we have this webinar, that maybe we can be of a resource in the future as well, but also for you to learn some things that we need to do differently. And I'm hoping that it's something that we all definitely take into account. So working with staffing firms such as Sabio Systems. So I started Sabio Systems back in 2006. And prior to that, I had worked for another recruiting company for almost 10 years. So altogether, I've been in the industry for a little over 25 years now in recruiting. And I've seen a lot of ups and downs in the business, from the highs that we were experiencing, the dot-com years, to then in 2008, 2009, that great recession that we experienced here in New Mexico and throughout the country. And then again, the rise of employment back to more normal levels. And then, of course, just most recently, the pandemic that we all went through and experiencing and still obviously going through today. So some of the things that I want to go over and why some employers that have used staffing companies tend to benefit from that. One of the things is flexibility, speed, and access to talent are among the top benefits cited by employers that utilize staffing firms. Recruiting is all we do every single day of the week, and we get to speak with a lot of people that some of them are very good, some of them are not so good, and some of them obviously you don't want to touch. So we're just something that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and those are the things that we try to do for you and avoid some of those pitfalls, because we get to experience some of these folks, and personally I've seen some of these resumes come and go over the past several years, and I can still see the trajectory of their careers as really not gone very well for reasons that you can see by looking at the resumes. So it's something that we gauge very seriously as we consider candidates that we're looking to submit to our employers for hire. The opportunity to gauge the talent fit before hiring is cited by 47% of employers because it gives them a chance to figure out, if it's an attempt to hire basis, looking at the folks real time on the job, and hopefully they're performing to your liking, but also just how serious are they about the position, the enthusiasm that they bring to the position. So that's one of the advantages of using a staffing service instead of just hiring them directly from day one. You will have more access to more candidates. It's 41% of employers are stating that they like working with staffing companies. We definitely get to look at people from all walks of life, all different industries. Sometimes, if you happen to be in a construction company or a medical company, sometimes the next hire may come from a different field altogether. So one of the things that we want to look at is being flexible in your hiring practices, because not every person that you hire and tends to be a superstar for is going to come from the same industry that you're already in. Okay, so you definitely want to have that flexibility as you hire more people. The ability to fill positions is 38%. And then that, again, sometimes we work with employers depending on the skill set that they're looking for. We can have somebody working out there on Monday. Today's Thursday. They can be out in your office at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. If it's something that we feel highly confident that it's going to be a good match for you, not just skills-wise, but also a good cultural fit for the size of your company, the size of your department, and so on. So there's a lot of factors that we take into account as we work with you in finding the right fit for you. And finally, at Sabio Systems, we're, like I said earlier, we're recruiting. We never stop. It's what we do every single day of the week. And it's something that we enjoy doing. And as recruiters, you live for that. Okay, so it's just one of those things that once you do this for after a while, it's definitely just becomes part of your life, and it's something that you just enjoy doing. So some of the smart strategies for recruiting top talent in a tight market. And this is something that we were looking at and reviewing some of the different, scenarios that you want to consider going forward. Number one, cater your hiring process to the candidate. Okay, it's something when you design your interview process, you want to design it for maximum efficiency and candidate engagement, so that candidates know what to expect in your process and feel respected and valued. So it's something that you want to review. So if you haven't reviewed that in the past 5 years, you definitely want to take a look at that today and make some adjustments and see what you can do differently that's going to help you attract better candidates. You got to use more technology these days to your advantage. You consider using Zoom or Teams, Microsoft Teams, or other web conferences in the early stages of interviews, just to before, again, if you have the time, before you bring them in for a face-to-face, just to get a feel for them in person, over Zoom, I should say, and see if it's someone that you truly want to have in your office and take the next step forward. Personalize your email communication with the candidates. Don't just use a cookie cutter format. You want to let them know, because as someone that's receiving that email, you want to make sure that they feel like it's catered specifically to them, and not just a random email that is probably more commonplace with huge corporations. But I'm guessing the folks in the audience today tend to be more small businesses here in New Mexico, and you want to just take the time to make it a little more personal and in your approach and in your communication. Okay. Capture interview team feedback quickly. So depending on who's part of the interview process, you want to go through that very quickly. You don't want to take too long and get feedback from them. If someone is going to be out of town, you definitely want to assign someone in their place to make sure that that person gets you the feedback, or that person that sits in for them is there to provide the feedback. But it's highly important these days right now that providing feedback to candidates very quickly is key, especially if it's a positive interview and you want to move ahead with them. You definitely want to communicate that with your team as quickly as possible. The good candidates these days are not lasting very long in the market. So if you interview them on Monday and they're pretty sharp, you have to assume that probably they might be having 2-3 other interviews that same week. Okay, so it's not just you they're meeting with. So always take that into account. Market your organization. We've done a few studies, and also I'm looking at national trends, and we found that most candidates these days want 3 primary things from a hiring company. One is a clear understanding of the company culture, insight into employee experience, and a sense of connection with the employer brand. So they want to know who you are, what you make, how you do it. And if you have a website, great. But again, you have to keep it current. You don't want to have pictures there from 1980s of people doing the work. If you're a construction company, highlight some of the projects, on site. Take pictures of folks from your team at the location, just to give that candidate a sense of what it looks like working for your business. If you're more in an office environment, maybe have an internal shot of your company, of your cubicles or the office setup, something like that, just to get candidates excited about what they may walk into one day, perhaps. A team picture always helps. So if you don't have on your website, definitely put that in there. Okay.
Hey, don't do that.
I'm sorry. Here are a few ways to make your company a little more marketable to candidates as well. Use your company's website and social media to promote your organization's mission, vision, values, and culture. Okay. Again, it doesn't take a whole lot to have a Facebook page these days. And if you need to, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or what have you. You can reach out to some freelancers out there that can build that for you very quickly. If you've used places like Upwork or Fiverr, are pretty good sources to find talented people like that. And I've used it for some projects here over the years, and it's worked out really well, depending on something really short that just need a little refresh perhaps. But definitely you want to stay current. People can tell. I've seen websites that are only just one page when I go to check them out. Again, if you're looking to hire people, that's not going to get anybody very excited about it, okay? Come up with 2 or 3 wild selling points of why candidates should consider your company. Again, any more testimonials is definitely a very healthy approach. Next is emphasize your employee referral program. I've over the years, I've hired many people here in the office that were referred by current employees. So that's something that that never goes out of style, and it's always worked out well, because your current employees are hopefully only going to refer those people to you that's going to make them look good. Okay, so it's their reputation on the line. So hopefully they'll be providing some solid candidates for you to consider. So that's always, and I'm sure a lot of you already doing that. Should be one of your first go-to plans. So things to provide to some of your internal employees that refer candidates, with gift cards, cash, some extra PTO, perhaps time off. Others could also be maybe a luncheon with the business owner or the president of the company, maybe 2 or 3 quarters or something like that, just to let them know that you highly appreciate that, and it's something that you want the rest of your employees also to think about too, if you can. So next thing is talk about salary early. This is a very important point. This is something that we do often with our candidates from day one, from our initial pre-screen and throughout the interview process. Is definitely something you want to talk about. Nothing is more frustrating than working with a candidate for over a month or so, or only to find out that there's a $30,000 difference in what they're looking versus what the company can offer. Okay, so you definitely want to talk about that as early as possible in the recruiting process. It's depending on who's doing the hiring for you. That person may or may not be qualified for that, or it's someone someone else in your company that needs to be part of that. You definitely want to have that person involved in the process early so they can bring that topic up. Okay. Again, you don't want to let this linger much longer than the first pre-screen, and that way, at least if you even want to consider moving forward with that candidate. Many candidates are reluctant to share their actual compensation. One thing you also have to be aware of: there are some states around the country now that are restricting that compensation. You no longer, in some states, I'm not sure about New Mexico, but we've removed it from our application as far as the checking that box off as far as compensation goes. Okay, so it's definitely something that you want to discuss, but some candidates, again, may be reluctant to do so. But at some point, it has to be brought up. Okay, you just can't proceed with candidates that are reluctant to discuss it. Otherwise, you may not get to the finish line with them. To ensure compensation compatibility before moving forward, your hiring manager may ask something like, what are your salary expectations? At least get a tight range. You don't want to get a $15,000 range. That's way too big. So try to narrow it down as much as possible, and hopefully now you have a good understanding of where you stand. Okay. You may also have the candidate come back and ask you, what is the salary range being offered for this position? So again, you as the employer should have a rough idea of where you want to be. So you want to think about your company's financial situation. What can you afford in this position? Is this going to be a managerial position? It's going to be a more junior level position. So you want to think about your cash flow, right? All those things come into place. So before you put that job posting on there, you should have an idea of where you stand when it comes to compensation. So looking at your book of business, financial statements is definitely a key component in making a good hire and choosing the right candidate and choosing them at the correct compensation. And always be recruiting. This is like what we do here. There should be someone that you appoint in your company that's always looking out for candidates, because you never know who's going to be walking into your office with a letter in hand and to tender their resignation. So it's good practice just to have someone that's always keeping a file of resumes that they receive from time to time. Perhaps you want to have an open requisition on your website that states something, not a specific position, but that you're always willing to accept resumes, and see, and hopefully from there you can always again keep a pipeline. Maybe reach out to some of these folks from time to time, but it's always best practice not to wait until the day that that person sends in the resignation to then move on to your search again, which again is these days it's gonna take much longer than you expect. Number 7, finally, be prepared for counteroffers. These days, employers that are maybe getting those resignations are not going to be happy with people tending in the resignation. So they may want to keep them and come up with some creative way of keeping them on board. So anytime that you do offer a position to someone, there's a high probability that their current employer may offer them a counteroffer. So you have to keep that in mind. And that's why you should always have a plan B in case this person doesn't accept your offer, that maybe there's another person that you liked, maybe not quite as much, but might still be qualified enough for you to revisit them again. So, but always think about the counteroffer. It's happening behind the scenes, whether you want to admit it or not. It's going to continue happening. So, and so we have some ideas here as far as what you can do to overcome that. Simply, sweetening the deal, perhaps sign-on bonus. Extra time off, maybe a quick review of 6 months instead of a year, perhaps. Anything that can make that carrot a little bit more exciting to your prospect. So, but again, counteroffers do happen, and they do happen often. Okay. And we're also now going to look at some of the pitfalls that you want to avoid. Okay, so. And again, these days, some of these pitfalls are not so much the fault of the employer, but just the lack of talented individuals that are there for hire today. So, sometimes, we do our best to attract the right talent. We're very creative in our job postings, but we're still going to struggle in finding people. And it's something that we're experiencing every single day. So we get calls from employers a little more often than we used to before, just because it's a much tighter labor market, and they're looking for some suggestions, some help, and how we can best help them out, whether it's just more on a temporary basis or a direct hire long-term basis. Some of the pitfalls to avoid: not staying in touch with candidates throughout the process. So if you interview someone, again, this week, last week, and you like them, and you have maybe 2, 3 more interviews left to go, reach out to those individuals. Let them know that you're still going through the process. That way they feel like they still have a shot at your position and not just ignored. Not knowing the marketplace salaries. Again, do some research on that. There's a lot of information online that you can narrow down by cities, and also talking to other employers in the area, perhaps. But checking out other job boards as well too. Some of them do list salary ranges. Places like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, some of them, you can see what some of other companies are paying as well. And that's a key component of a good job description. If you're not listing the salary range in your job description, you will be at a disadvantage versus other companies. That's a huge factor these days. So if you're just putting DOE, well, that sharp candidate may just look you over and look at the next position that's just as attractive as yours. So people just don't have the time. I think a lot of social media and other factors come into place. People are just not waiting around for DOE, so they want to know, they want to have an idea before they even send you the resume. Okay, so make that as prominent, as clear as possible. Not being realistic about temp to hire options. That's something that we offer on a regular basis. But also you have to give you some caution with that. attempt to hire, obviously you get to the opportunity to look at these folks on the job and see who's doing well and who may not, and who may you want to extend a full-time offer to. But depending on the level of responsibilities and the caliber that you're seeking, the higher salary individuals may not be so open to leave a current job for attempt to hire job. So you may have to consider bringing them in on a direct hire basis. Okay, so again, that's just one of the trends that we're seeing now. Depending if you're hiring a controller, people at that level and higher, you're not going to get too many enthusiastic responses from people that will consider that job as attempt to hire possibly. Okay, just something to consider out there. If when it comes to staying in touch with candidates, if you tell a candidate they should have an offer by the end of the week, make sure that happens. Okay, if you're not so sure about that, let them know it's going to take a couple of weeks to go through the process, but time kills all deals. So please keep that in mind. Okay. When it comes to salaries, again, I just want to revisit that a little bit more. There's been an increase between salaries between last year and 2020 and 2021. Also, a lot of that has been hyped by a lot of the large corporations that you hear about nationally. So some of these things, some of these breaking news that you see about compensation around the country tend to be focused on the higher paying positions with the high sales positions, but also with some of these multi-billion-dollar companies. So don't get too wound up about what some of these salary ranges are, because Microsoft, because Google and so forth are telling you some things, or they're offering certain things. You have to ignore some of that chatter and stay more focused on what's going on locally as well too. We've seen companies that are advertising jobs at a certain range, but their margins in what their product is or whatever their sales is could be as high as 60-70%, right? And if you're running a restaurant business, you're looking at 2, 3, 4% maybe margins on your sales. So don't get too caught up with some of those highlights that you see in the news, because it's just it sounds great, and the news business is out there to promote something that people are going to talk about. But again, we've seen that a lot of our local clients have certain ranges that are pretty much in line with the local market. So keep that in mind as we move along, and hopefully you'll realize that the market in some cases may not be as tight depending on the industry you happen to be in, the sector you happen to be in. Okay, we've seen that it's fluctuating a lot between the different sectors. So just hang in there, and again, we're here to help. So this is basically what I wanted to get across today, and I'm looking forward to some of your questions, comments, and hopefully what we provided today has been informative. And like I said, you can reach out to me, to the rest of my team, to give you any kind of indication of what's trending. I think this month, I would say the last 60 days, a lot of that has been impacted by the surge in COVID cases. But from what I'm reading, from what I've seen, we're looking at the beginning of next month as this peaking and probably stabilizing a lot more, where you're going to have better chances of people coming back more into the workforce in full force than they have been this past 60 days, perhaps. Thank you.
All right, so we did have a couple of questions that were submitted ahead of time.
Okay.
The first one is, as a temp agency, are you seeing a shortage in applicants?
We're obviously, every agency is going to be different. We all have different approach on how we reach out to our candidates. We're very busy. We're getting a lot of applicants these days. Through social media, through our website, people that we're reaching out through different job boards, from we reach out to people through universities, from UNM, CNM, New Mexico State, all over the state in this case, and then obviously from out of state as well. We get resumes from people that are looking to relocate to New Mexico. So I would say, for as tight as the labor market is today, we at Sabio Systems are not experiencing a dramatic shortage of candidates. I think we've done pretty well in finding the right folks. It's just a matter of, we still have to do our due diligence and really weed out those candidates that we don't want to submit to you. But overall, I think we're doing pretty good for the situation that we're facing today.
All right. A director.
Hey, good morning. Hey, Nick. Morning. Hey, Brian Baca here.
Yes, Brian.
Thank you so much. This was so informative. And, I'm just so thankful of when our relationship began over 8 years ago. And that's about how long you've been accredited with us, when my very good friend Raphael Warren introduced us.
Yes.
The first resource that we needed from you wasn't, well, it was kind of staffing, but I called up my friend Raphael from the National Guard desk, and we had all brand new desktops for all of our staff, and we needed some help getting those. And you had someone there, like you said, in a couple of days, and then from what I hear, he even found a full-time job after he did that for us. But Nick, we've used you 3 times for staffing, and I may have been one of the ones that wasn't realistic about temp to perm options, but I am very realistic on it now. The 3 candidates and what you talk about, these are quality applicants that we were getting on a Monday when we need them short notice. I will tell you the 3 candidates that you gave us, 2 of them are still employed with us over 2 years now and climbing the ladder, our ladder here in the nonprofit. And then one of them, our first one, would have stayed and we would have hired her, but she was moving to Arizona. So very, very resourceful information. Just so happy that a lot of these tips that you were giving us, that we are following them. We do the benchmarks on the ranges for nonprofit compared to New Mexico and now.
Correct.
And we do put the salary, the base range of the salary on the applications. But you've been a great resource for us, Nick. And I mean, everywhere we go, and no matter what type of business we see in these industries, everyone says, need help hiring. Everyone is hiring out there, and you are a great resource for the community.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate that. And I'm very, very happy to hear that 2 of those folks are still with your firm. So that's outstanding. And then that's the kind of outcome that we like to see with our clients, frankly. So, but really appreciate you. I didn't realize you were on the call, so thank you so much, and really appreciate your feedback. And it really means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a question in the chat. Is how do you recommend keeping and retaining employees?
Good question. So, and again, I'm talking from personal experience as well too. So I've had people resign in our company, and you're not going to be able to retain and keep everyone that you wish, but these days, you definitely want to be having conversations with your staff on a more regular basis. Typically, we were doing annual reviews for our staff, but we're thinking that's what's working out better for us now is more like every 6 months, just to talk about where they're at, the progress from when you first hire them to where they are today, where they need to improve, where have they excelled expectations, and so forth. But I think you have to make people aware that you recognize their work, and also why the value that they bring to your company as well. But more importantly, you want to hear it from them. You don't want to assume what you believe to be true until you hear it from them. So if you're doing annual reviews, I would recommend definitely changing that up to more of a 6-month. That way you do it every 6 months. It's not so much a huge process that you have to prepare for, okay? And hopefully that will shed some light as to who you see as someone that's going to be with you long term, or who do you see as someone that might be on the fence or perhaps not too happy with where they are today.
Any more questions for Nick? All right, I think that is it. Thank you so much, Nick, for participating in our webinar. And we look forward to seeing everyone next month for our next webinar with FTC.
Thank you.